The 100% Hungarian-owned company Masterplast, established in 1997, has become one of the leading building material production and wholesales companies in Central Eastern Europe. Having affiliates in 18 countries, Masterplast employs around 800 people. A 24-hour delivery is ensured to the retail trade clients with a fleet of over 200 trucks. With their products, they offer energy-saving and cost-efficient solutions on the fields of heat, sound and water insulation, roofing and dry building. Masterplast's Thermomaster External Thermal Insulation System. The Thermomaster thermal insulation system has been developed for the thermal insulation of the external walls of buildings. It is resistant to extreme weather conditions. The surface is durable, hydrophobic, self-cleaning and very flexible. The available color range is quite wide. Finishing plasters can be selected from almost 1,000 different colors. The following benefits can be reached by the installation of Thermomaster External Thermal Insulation System. Lower heating and cooling costs, easy in installation even with little practice, a higher conformity level of living, a higher real estate value with an energy certificate, less emission of greenhouse gases, a longer life cycle, and a 10-year warranty for the system. Applying the Thermomaster thermal insulation system is popular not only among professionals but also among talented house renovators. Preliminary work and preparations. Before starting, do not forget to check the status of the external walls. Find out what the facade is made of, how thick the walls are and what layers they may contain. The most frequently used wall types are made of stone, concrete, solid brick, hollow or perforated bricks, that is Porotherm, and autoclaved aerated concrete, that is Itong. After this, try to investigate if there are any signs of cold bridges or heat loss on the external wall, meaning how the girdles, bearers, balconies were originally built. Are they thermal insulated or was this missing during the installation process? We may conclude this easily if we see any signs of fungi inside the building. Finally, it is worth checking if there are any signs of leaking structures, as these problems must be eliminated first before starting the installation process. Before installation, those elements of the facades must be removed which may obstruct the work or would be unnecessarily covered by the thermal insulation. These can be rain gutters running close to the walls, handrails, gas pipes on the external walls, window breastworks, or even ornament profiles and stuccos next to the windows or doors. What to buy for the installation? How much should be calculated for every square meter of the wall? Isomaster EPS H80 polystyrene insulation board in the desired thickness, 1 square meter. Masterfix Pro adhesive and base coat mortar, around 7 kilograms depending on the surface. At least 145 grams per square meter Masternet fiberglass mesh, 1.1 square meter for a 10 centimeter overlap. Plastic anchors in appropriate length, suitable for the applied thermal insulation material thickness, at least 6 pieces. White or color thin plaster primer, roughly 1.18 liter. White or color thin plaster in plastic pail, either in 1.5 or 2 mm thickness, floated or ribbed by structure, depending on the type selected, 2.2 to 3 kilograms. Purchase the accessories of the insulation in advance. The Sokol profile, the hammer-fixed dowels needed for its fixing, the corner beads with fiberglass mesh and balcony profiles used for the precise installation and protection of the corners, the window connection profiles, building PE foils and adhesive tapes for clean work. Hand tools and devices required for the work. Some measuring tape, spirit levels, best to have both a shorter 70 to 90 centimeter and a longer 2 meter long one. Fine rope, cutting blades, a metal saw, metal sheet cutting scissors, a drilling machine, a small hammer, several plastic buckets, mortar mixing device, a gypsum baler, a plastering trowel, stainless steel and plastic, a two-handed notch trowel with a minimum 6 mm notch size, polystyrene emery, a brush, a teddy roller, a measuring pot for water. The tools must always be clean, free of rust or other contamination. Normal steel devices are exposed to higher corrosion level due to the alkaline content of the adhesive and because if the rust mixes into the mortar, it may alter the colors of the finished facades by passing through the thin plaster. The steps of Thermomaster external thermal insulation system installation are the following. Dedusting and cleaning the surface. Thermomaster system can be applied on a stable and permanent surface of concrete, brick walls, old and new plasters, betony plates, OSB boards or even iTong walls. The temperature of the surface must be above 5 degrees centigrade, free of dust, grease or other contamination. Remove all loose or crispy parts or overhangs and repair the missing parts with concrete mortar patches. Precise measurements and the cross-checking of the flatness of walls are quite important during the preparation of the basement. Smaller discrepancies may be corrected with the adhesive of polystyrene boards, but the thickness of this layer must not exceed 3 mm. With the thermal insulation system, you can correct only limited deviations in the wall by the usage of thicker or thinner adhesive patches at the sticking points of the boards. Their thickness may range between 0.5 and 2 cm. The usage of a thicker adhesive layer is not economic and not recommended from a thermal conductivity perspective. The fixation of the socle profile. The socle profile has a multiple function. The corrosion-free aluminium socle profile protects the most vulnerable part of the external thermal insulation system, the lowest edge. It enables to create a straight, aesthetic footing edge. By starting the sticking of the boards from the socle profile, work can be carried out faster and more precisely. Fix the socle profile with hammer-fixed dowels mechanically to the wall at 40 cm distances between the dowels. The socle profile must be fixed in a straight line, horizontally. Use a spirit level and a fine rope for the marking. It is worth running the marking around the entire building and check if the starting and finishing points are at the same place. Use E-jot plastic spaces between the wall and the socle profile if the wall is uneven at the fixation point of the socle profile. These spacers can be purchased in different thicknesses, each size having a different color. Don't forget to use E-jot profile connectors in order to keep the junctions of the profile smooth. The adhesive mixing. Masterfix Pro polystyrene board adhesive is a ready-made mixture mortar available in bags. Just add water to it at the place of the installation and it is ready to use. One bag of adhesive, that is 25 kilos, can be mixed with 6.5 to 7 liters of water by putting the water first into a clean plastic pail and adding the adhesive to it. The well-mixed material should stay 2 or 3 minutes in the pail to enable the solution of special dispersions in the adhesive and should be mixed again. If you miss this step, the material dries faster and affects negatively the collision properties of the adhesive too. The prepared adhesive mixture must be installed within 1 hour at room temperature and within 30 minutes if there's draft or it's warmer. Don't try to reuse or thin up the adhesive once it has started to bond. The application of the adhesive on insulation boards. Put the adhesive patches along the borders and on the market points of the EPS boards with a gypsum baler at 20 to 25 cm distances as shown in the figure. It is forbidden to add adhesive on the sides of the EPS boards. It is an important rule to use adhesive patches at the fixation points if you use dowels for the installation. as the dowel can hold only if the EPS board below the dowel flange is fixed by the adhesive, and the mechanical fixation cannot pull the thermal insulation. The installation of the lowest EPS board level. When placing the EPS boards on the Sokol profile, push the surface of the boards moderately above the adhesion points. Move the boards slightly sidewards in order to help the even spreading of the adhesive. Check the vertical position of the boards with a spirit level. Stick the EPS boards in overlap with the boards one row lower. Ideally, the overlap will be the size of half a board. If you need to use a board smaller than that, do not put it at the corners. The installation of EPS boards above windows. Use complete EPS boards above the window corners. Try to avoid to create any board gaps at the corners. You can achieve this by cutting the EPS boards to an L shape. The preparation of the window reveals. Don't forget to insulate the window reveals, that is, the window sidewalls. In the case of new buildings, if a window husk widener has been prepared beforehand, the same thickness of EPS boards can be used for the insulation of the reveals. If an old house is being insulated with no extra space at the husks, you can use only 2 to 3 cm wide EPS boards. Here we recommend using Isomaster graphite EPS boards with lower thermal conductivity values. Grinding with emery. The grinding of finished surface with emery should be timed at least 1 day after the hardening of the adhesive in favorable weather conditions. The main goal is to avoid any movement of the boards during the grinding process. The usage of an emery is only a little additional work with an appropriate tool, but if done, the grinded surface requires less troweling, ensures a smooth surface, and the thickness of the prepared crust will be even. For emery, we recommend using 30 or 40 bead size emery paper, bended on a 20 x 30 cm size plastic or wooden board. For grinding, move the tool in a circular manner and continuously check the evenness of the surface. After finishing the work, de-dust the surface. Anchoring. Anchors must be used in each case for old painted or plastered facades, aerated concrete walls, at places of extreme wind suction, and for new buildings above 8 meters. Dowels must be installed as the following figure shows, using at least 6 pieces per square meter. An important rule is to use adhesive at the fixation points of the anchors, where the adhesive has already hardened before starting the installation of the dowels. The holes of the anchors must be drilled with the right size drilling head in appropriate diameter and length, depending on the wall and the anchor type. In order to choose the right length of anchors, consider the depth of fixing, the thickness of the existing plaster, the EPS board used, and of course the additional 1 or 1.5 cm thickness of the adhesive. When installation is done on hollow or perforated bricks, such as porotherm, do not use a hammer drill, just a normal so-called carrot head driller. For OSB, gypsum fiber and cement boards, the hammer-fixed anchors must not be applied. In this case, you must use a dowel flange with commercial screws for wood by using 8 pieces of dowel flanges per square meter. The installation of the accessory profiles. Before starting the plastering process, you must install the accessory profiles sold as the accessories of Thermomaster system. Profiles with fiberglass mesh, window connection profiles, balcony profiles, etc. The usage of the accessory profiles are not compulsory for a good quality external wall insulation, but they enable a higher resistance of corners, speed up the installation process, and the overall result will be more aesthetic. Each profile has a different function, but they all must be installed with Masterfix Pro adhesive before starting the troweling. These profiles with fiberglass mesh must be pushed into adhesive layer prepared at the corners by a notched trowel. Then, after setting the final position of the profiles, they must be troweled again in order to gain a smooth surface at the junctions. The preparation of the base coat. The base coat ensures the adequate hardness of the thermal insulation system. Embed fiberglass mesh with a unit weight of at least 145 grams per square meter into a minimum 3 mm thick adhesive layer above the EPS boards. The prescribed thickness must be ensured along the entire surface. This can be achieved by the application of the adhesive with an at least 8 mm notch-sized notch trowel. The right method of installation is to push the fiberglass mesh into the adhesive layer created by the notch trowel and to gloss the adhesive passing through the mesh. Approximately 3 kg of adhesive is required per square meter for the creation of a 3 mm thick trowel layer. Generally speaking, it is not recommended doing the troweling in warm or windy weather conditions, as even a smaller airflow or sunshine may speed up the setting of the material. You have to organize the work in order to have the least possible gap in time among the work phases and the preparation of base coat areas next to each other. Protect the base coat layer against fast drying, rain, constantly high humidity, and temperatures below 5 degrees centigrade. Forget these types of work if the conditions are not suitable. The fiberglass mesh rolls must overlap by 10 cm with each other when pushed into the base coat. At the corners of the windows and doors, add a 30 x 40 cm size reinforcing fiberglass mesh rotated by 45 degrees to avoid diagonal cracks. The fiberglass mesh is not visible if the base coat was done properly. The surface is even and smooth. If needed, after the bonding of the base coat but before the complete hardening, 1 to 3 days after the work, grind again with an emery and apply a thin layer of plaster with a plastering trowel. It is worth checking the surface with a surface side light, and if needed, you should carry out the potential reparations before putting on the expensive final cover layer. Primering. Before applying the primer, check the surface if it is suitable for the color plaster, that is, not contaminated, solid, with no soft or unbonded parts. Also see that the fiberglass mesh is not visible and the surface is smooth and even. The primer ensures uniform absorption properties to the complete base coat. The primer is a liquid, paint-alike material similar to plaster in both the color and the ingredients. Its application can be done either by a teddy roller or a brush. Don't dilute the primer and use the quantities recommended by the producer. The preparation of the finishing coat. The preparation of the finishing coat requires the most practice and the highest level of teamwork. As the render provides the final visible surface of the installation, it has to be installed with utmost attention and adherence to the following rules. The rendering may be started once the primer has dried completely, the polymerization is over. This usually takes 6 to 8 hours at room temperature, which may reduce to 2 hours if the weather is warm and windy. Attention! If the installation is done in humid autumn weather, this time may increase to 24 to 36 hours. The rendering shall be organized in a way that the plaster is applied from one corner to the other without any stop. If scaffolding is used, the different work levels shall be connected to each other when the material is still wet. Prepare sufficient volume of plaster which is enough for one wall section. Check the production date, the serial number, the color code, and the type of the plaster, that is, whether it's floated or ribbed, acrylic or silicone, and what grain size it has. If possible, use materials of the same production serial number on one wall. Before starting to render, open the buckets and mix the render. If colored renders are used, it is worth double-checking the uniformity of the mixed colors. If the serial numbers are different, mix the materials even if the render types, colors and particle sizes are the same, or use them on explicitly separated surfaces. If you mix the plaster, don't forget to add the materials from the top of the pails into the mixture. Apply the mixed render in a steady thickness with a stainless steel trowel. Then push the tool to the surface at a beveled angle and remove the excess material. After a few minutes, another team member using plastic trowel should finish the surface. In order to create the final structure, move the trowel on the floated render in a circular manner, but for ribbed render the tool can be used in a circular manner, vertically or horizontally. The most sensitive part of the rendering is to find the right moment for the creation of the final structure. The optimal timing is when the material has already started to stick to the surface but is not dried out or crispy. The right timing, depending also on the weather conditions, can be defined by trials, even for an experienced installation team. It is not enough to create the structure at the right time, but it is also very important that the team members work with the same moves, especially when creating a ribbed structure. We perceive a small alteration in the structure as a blur, as human eyes may perceive the shadows of the different size and volume grains as a color tone alteration. Unfortunately, uneven structures cannot be efficiently repaired. The blur-like corrections make the situation even worse. The solution is to avoid huge conjoined surfaces and try to use some kind of partition for them, such as a decoration line, decoration elements, or changing the material. The removal of the foils, cleaning and withdrawal from the site. The finished wet render hardens by drying out. The bonding time may be slowed down if the humidity is high or the temperature is low, elongating the process even to 3 or 4 days, whereas warm weather accelerates it. Extreme heat or wind may cause cracks in the render. The render becomes rainproof after 24 hours at room temperature. Wet plaster must not get into direct contact with rain. If possible, remove the unnecessary scaffolding parts parallelly with the rendering process, in order to enable the reparation of their fixation points while the render is still wet, that is, not to cause blurs on the surface. If the removal of the scaffolding is impossible, make sure that the work levels are clean and do not let the wind or the rain carry any contamination on the fresh surface. By now, the job is done. It's time to remove the protection foils, do the cleaning up, and of course sit back in an armchair in the garden and enjoy the beauty of the refurbished and energy-saving facade of your house. Once again, the benefits of the Thermomaster external thermal insulation system are the following: lower heating costs in wintertime, more comfortable climate in summertime, easy installation, a higher conformity level of living, no fungi in the corners, a higher real estate value, protection of our environment, less emission of greenhouse gases, CO2, a 10-year warranty for the Thermomaster thermal insulation system, certified with a stamp, but designed for the complete life cycle of the building. Thermomaster. Thermal insulation, savings guaranteed.